We wanted to welcome everybody to our training today. We're excited to have you. It's been a little while since we've had a training, but we have got some really, really cool products coming out that we're excited to talk to you about. So do stay tuned for updates on our trainings and these webinars that we'll do. Like I said, these next coming months and the beginning of next year, we have some really, really cool new stuff that we're going to be introducing that we're very, very excited about. So stay tuned. Today, we are going to be talking about the EIS telephone entry, cellular-based telephone entry line of products. Today's going to be a little different, though. We are not going to talk at all about the hardware options that we have. We've done a previous training on that can be found on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Transmitter Solutions, and you will see all of the videos that we have. And you can watch that on our hardware. But today we're going to have a session on going through just the software and getting you familiar with our cloud-based software. IceWare is, all of our ICE products are operated through our cloud-based software, which is extremely nice, and our phone app. The phone app is very similar to the cloud-based software. Today we're just going to be going through the cloud-based software. And good news for everybody who's watching, you don't have to listen to me talk the entire time. I've invited Dan Falk, who is our technical support manager, into this training. Many of you have probably talked to him. He does a really good job. He's very knowledgeable about all of our products. If you haven't talked to him, you should call and just talk to him. He likes talking. So you can call him. But I've invited him in so that he can walk you through the IceWare software and get you comfortable and familiar with it. Please feel free, like in all of the trainings that we do, to ask questions. We do have Melissa monitoring all of the questions. So as they come up, type them in. She'll ask them to Dan, and Dan will do his best to address them. If he doesn't know, he'll write them down, and we will find them out for you and get back to you. Couple things, again, just to keep in mind is in November and December, we'll also be doing webinars, and then January, February, keep your eyes out for the cool stuff that we have coming. Also, we will have some big announcements for the ICE cellular-based telephone entry. There are some new cool things coming out, new features always being added, and we'll have some of those to announce hopefully in January, the beginning of next year. So as we're going through this, and as Dan is showing you this, just know that we are open to suggestions, and we like to hear feedback so that we can make a product that is best for you and for your customers. Real quick, before I turn it over to Dan, I'm going to jump over to our computer here and show you. I said we wouldn't talk about hardware, but I'm going to take 2 seconds. So on our website, transmittersolutions.com, under our products, you can go to ICE GSM Solutions. And this is where you can get data sheets and information on all of the different ICE. These are all cellular-based products that we have. So you're able to see. And Dan wanted me to point out the one here, the ICE LCD in the bottom left, is the one that the software he was showing you. Keep in mind that all the software looks identical. Just we chose the ICE LCD because it has the most features and the most functionality with a lot more names to be able to put in, and he'll explain that to you. But all of these are cellular-based. And if you click on any of them, so I'll click on the LCD, you can dive down deeper and get, in our download section, the information on the iPhone and Android app, which we do have, and then cut sheets, manuals, wiring diagrams, all of that. So that can be found on our website. So what we'll do now is I'll turn the time over to Dan. He'll spend some time going through the software with you and getting you comfortable with it. Again, ask Melissa with any questions you have, and then I'll be back on towards the end. Thanks.
Hi and welcome. This is Dan. What I'm going to do is go through a few things on this particular software. Let me get over to the device list. This is the secondary screen once you've logged in to IceWare. What you want to do is go to iceware.com and log in. If you've not created a login, it gives you multiple choices whether you choose a Google or just do it directly by creating a username and password. Once you do that, it'll pull up the secondary screen, which you see right here. Right now I have a particular unit. You can kind of just ignore this. Quinn likes to have random things in here. But yours will actually be blank like this is down here. What you'll see on the left side is device list. This is where you're going to click just like that, and then what it'll do is it'll pop up every one of your particular devices that are available. You can have as many as you want. It just keeps on going and going and going. So if you're a dealer and you have 50 units out there, you can have access to each one of them, and you can name them as you want. I got a hand.
Okay, we have a question. Can I build the database before I have the hardware?
You can. What you need to do is get an Excel spreadsheet template that we have. And I believe the web page we have listed. Let me just change over here so you can see right here. So this particular one is for the LCD. If I were to click on it, hopefully this has Excel on it. You have to bear with me. It doesn't look like we have Excel on this PC. But what you're going to do is you're going to click on this right here. It'll give you a template. Stay within the template. It has tabs on it. And actually, I can show you once we're in the device. I can export out a template, a blank one, and we can kind of see that. If not, because we don't have Excel, just click right here. As you guys are watching this, you can see it and look at it and ask me questions. So going back to this tab, hopefully I answered that for you. The device list here, this is going to give you a team. Now this isn't used very much. You can create team users where you have someone that is dominantly controlling, and then you can specify certain people in here to have access to it. Preferably, what you want to do is go in here and then limit who you want to have access to, and we can go through that in a little while once we kind of get the idea of just how to set one up and move forward from there. So from this blank screen, what you're going to first want to do once you're logged in is you're going to want to hit this plus sign over here in this far corner. What you'll do is you'll get a light green bar here. You want to name it. This will be your device itself. You can name it the property. You can name it, some people do front gate, back gate, pool door. Really, it's up to you and what you want to do. The customers, the end user is never going to see it. It's more for you to remind you of what you want to do. I have not tested this one. This is going to be just like you guys. I pulled one out of our shelf, put a SIM card in it, powered it on. So we're all going to be surprised if it doesn't get on, but we generally don't have any problems. So let's name this one. I like to call everything test. Test for training. The IME is a dedicated number on the chip on the main module in the unit that, like a cell phone or anything else, identifies that unit to the cellular network. It's located when you open up the front cover. So if I click here, so if you put in the key and this cover comes down, underneath the speaker and the microphone, where the power goes in right here, there's a module about this size. Right on the chip, about in this placement on the opposite side of that cover, there's a sticker that says IME. And to kind of give you an idea, to be realistic, a lot of you will install it, walk away from it, and then the customer comes in and starts doing this. They didn't happen to get that information. So let's pretend that we didn't get the IME. Let's just say we know what our SIM number is because we purchased a SIM card from Transmitter Solutions. These units can use T-Mobile or AT&T at this current time. There is availability in the future. We're trying to get other providers. So that could be coming down the road here. So let's put in one that I know of. That's a SIM card that I have that I put in there. It is a T-Mobile unit, so what you're going to want to do is come over to your GPRS settings. and you want to select your provider. The dominant one is T-Mobile and AT&T. If you live in California, there's some other ones out there. As you can see, if you're in rural Colorado, this one works really good. There are some others. So as we get them, we add them. If there's particular ones that work really well with what you guys want within the T-Mobile AT&T network, please suggest them. So this one is T-Mobile. You select it. The location bar is another item that most end users will never see. This is going to be for identification purposes. You can do location. It's really just a box for notation. Once you're done with that and you're comfortable with it, you're going to hit the plus, or if you're really good in Excel or whatnot, you're probably used to hitting enter. That also works. As you see, we added a secondary one. It randomly puts a generic IME in there since we didn't add it, because I'm going to be like you and say, well, I don't know what it is right at this point. We do know the phone number. We do know these. So what it's going to do is it's going to go out and dial this number, and then it's going to try to identify what the IME is. So let's go ahead and just double-click anywhere on the bar you can see it's highlighted. Let's go ahead and add it. So it instantly recognized that that phone number is attached to this IME. So it instantly, that quickly found that that was the IME that was attached to this phone number. If you have multiple units and you're using one SIM card and putting it in your device on your workbench as you pre-test it, which is highly recommended that you put it into programming, go through all the steps instead of doing it out in the middle of the heat on a job site. Just make sure that this is the correct IME. If it is, just hit fix. It'll change it. You'll notice that this right here will change to that. And then what it's going to do is it's going to try to connect. So what you do is you'll see it refresh. And then what you'll notice is it has the name that we originally put in there. It now states it's an EIS LCD. The IME has been corrected, even though you didn't put it in there. If you know it, it won't give you that error message at the beginning saying fix. You'll just skip that step. But other than that, it goes to the same place. The location, as you can see, it's just in your profile. We named it earlier. It's just a white box. A lot of people don't even use it. Again, if you change your SIM card, say you want to jump around to AT&T because you lost your T-Mobile account and you'd rather go AT&T, it's a matter of just changing it here, changing your phone number. And what it'll do is it'll go out, say, building database again, and just update. Moving to the center, you'll see device maintenance, export, and import. A little earlier, we were talking about Excel files at the beginning. What you want to do, if this is a brand new and you don't have any templates, what you want to do is just leave your database empty and hit export. And then from there, since this has no event logs on it, you can just simply click this button. And what it'll do is it'll give you that little thing. And it'll give you an Excel file wherever you tell it to save it to. So we don't have Excel on here. Otherwise, it would open up Excel, and you'll see the file. Once you add the information, the phone numbers, everything you need into Excel, then all you're going to do is remember where you saved it, hit import, and then you're going to choose where the location is, and then you're going to choose the particular tabs that you want to import, which are match these tabs up here. So if you just change one PIN number, instead of spending a lot of time importing the whole database, you can just select the PIN access and just import that section. So moving down to settings, this is where you're actually going to be programming it. I personally like to do it on the web. There's a lot of people out there that are really good at Excel, and they're more comfortable with Excel and formatting, especially if you want to arrange names, phone numbers, everything alphabetically or descending order. Excel does really well with that. So you can export and import. So the first tab here you can see is Intercom. Intercom is going to be the button when you press it. this is going to be the LCD, so you're going to see the username. Position, I would never really change. What you're going to want to do is click the first position in apartment number, and you can name this what you'd like to. Okay, so what I did is in phone number 1, this is the phone number. When you select Dan, it'll call this number first. And then what it's going to do is it's going to wait for the amount of time that you have right here before it calls the second number. So this is in seconds, 25 seconds. So it'll try to dial for 25 seconds. If it doesn't pick up, what it'll do is it'll disconnect from this phone number and jump into this phone number. And if that doesn't happen, then it'll just disconnect. The username can be, I believe, 20 characters. I'm just going to put a long so it errors. Let's see what it does. Correct. So you can have up to 20 characters. You can't really do a number first. So I've had questions in the past say, I don't want the username to be displayed. I'd rather just see an apartment number. The way to get around that is to put a letter first. So it has to have a letter first. And then what you want to do is if they answer, so we called Dan. Dan picked up on this phone number here. I said, hello, who is this? They answer and say, hey, it's Tom. I'm at the gate or at the door. Can you open it up, please? The user that I picked up, I can hit 11 on my telephone on the keypad, and it'll open up the door or gate. And that would be, the 11 specifies relay 1. And I got a question, but relay 2 is going to be 21. I got a question.
All right, question is, do you have to do 11-digit dial or just 10-digit?
Ultimately, I hear in the new firmware, you can do it without the 1. If you have older firmware, say you have a unit that's been out there in the field, it will need the 1 until it's updated. I just have always gotten in the habit of putting a 1 there, but the new firmware does not require a 1 from what I've been told. 3.65 is the newest one, which is I believe 8.7 of 2018. So there's one step newer than this one. If I were to hit 11, it would automatically open up relay 1. You can change this to output 2 or disable it. Say that you didn't want Dan to have any access, you can disable it. So if this caller ID was caught, you couldn't enable a relay. That is an option. And then just always remember that you need to select it to get it to confirm or enter with that little check mark. And you can always double click in the bar to make any kind of edits you want. And then you just keep repeating it and on and on and on. So I believe this one is an LCD 200, so you can scroll down and this one will have 200. All those names will be displayed. Anything in the username will be displayed in alphabetical order as long as you're running the newer firmwares. If you have one in the field, I would say it'd have to be more than a year old. Get a hold of us. As the display, we would have to firmware update here, but the main panel, the main firmware, we could do here remotely. So that's just for you guys that have units that have been out in the field and you want the newer firmwares for the LCD for alphabetizing. Just give us a call or give me a call, and we'll do a swap. There's no charge. It's a matter of just shipping it to us, shipping it back to get that done. As far as the next tab here, this is the amount of time. These are just general settings. This is the amount of time that you can talk. So if you specify 90 seconds, you can talk to somebody on that call for 90 seconds. The reason it's here is if you get to call somebody, it goes into their voicemail. If you don't limit it, you could be leaving an hour-long voice message with nothing on it. So on the PIN codes here, access code, you can, this is just apartment number. This wouldn't be your PIN number quite yet. So this is just a apartment numbers. Okay, I guess I'm long-winded. So just remember that you can't go more than 90 seconds. Well, preferably, you can go as long as you want, really. But if you want to have really long voicemails that don't have anything in it, that's where you can do. You can shorten it to whatever you like. So that's really the amount of time the phone's open. You can disable caller IDs or enable them. That means anybody that has a phone number in phone number 1 and 2, if you were to call this number, so if I were to take my desk phone, dial this phone number, and dial this phone number here, it would automatically unlock relay 1. So a caller ID is just like having a key fob that you could walk right up to it and unlock it. So it recognizes your caller ID from your phone, unlocks the unit based on what it's triggered, where it's at. So this would be output 1 if we put it there. Keypad mode, there's different versions of it. We can get into that when we get into PIN codes. The standard is when you type your apartment number in the keypad, if you have remotes and you go more into the extended, you can do star and then the PIN. That'll give you more of a separation between remote and apartment numbers. Mostly it's never used, but it's available. This is where you can change your microphone and speaker levels. You can, if you don't like hearing sounds as the phone is ringing, like when you call out on a telephone, you can mute it. If you want to hear beeping sounds, you can silence it or not. And this is for anyone that needs support. You can't really see, can't really hear. What we've done is we've put an audio feedback for seconds based on when the door is open. So for instance, if you call, you open the door, there's not really a light blinking saying that the door's open. So we put an audio feature in there that'll beep outside through the speaker so they can kind of listen for an audio beep. You can set this, and I would suggest you set this for the same amount of time that you do your relay latch or your relay timing. So if you set it for 5 seconds for your strike to open for 5 seconds, I would set this for 5 seconds. So they understand that when the beeping stops, the door becomes locked again. The next tab over is your PIN access. What you're going to have is you're going to have 2 tables. Each table allows all your PIN numbers. You're going to have 1,000 PIN numbers in each side. Currently, what this first one is means they're joined. So table 1 and table 2, you have 1,000 on one side, and then it goes 1,001 and goes up to just under 2,000 over here. If you were to click separate, each table would be separate. So for instance, if you had PIN number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you had Dan here, and then on this table you had a remote or a card or a fob through an external reader, and you also had the same number, that someone couldn't walk in, type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when they shouldn't because they saw someone's remote. So someone's remote was on their keychain and they were at a party and someone saw the numbers on the remote and they go, oh, I'm going to get in. And they could just type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the keypad. So what you're going to want to do is separate it out and preferably not be able to have the same thing here. This would be private, preferably changed, but that just kind of gives you an idea that you can actually separate out the 2 tables. Use table 2 as a Wiegand 2 input. So if you had external card readers, Wiegand receivers, that you can specify the serial numbers on this side, and then you could put your PIN numbers on this side and not have to worry that a remote and a PIN number are going to be the same. So hopefully if there's a lot more to it, feel free to call me. We can go more detailed on this. You notice that each table has an output. You can make them both table 1. You can disable one if you'd prefer. A lot of people will do output 1 and output 2. And then what they'll do is they'll do table 2 as a latch. So you can do during business hours from 8 to 5, you can latch it based on a PIN number. That's really how you want to do it mostly, but it's really up to you guys. Enable PIN notifications. This is if an administrator wants to be notified every time a PIN is used. If I were to enable it, what you noticed is that this changed to a notify. So for instance, if I wanted to be notified every time that this PIN number was used, we could specify that and tell it who to call. So if I were to select it, and then in the administration tab, this is a list of people that can be notified, and I believe it's 5 people. And you can say input 1, I want to be notified of input 2, or I can put the PIN notification check mark here. And then you'd be notified by that phone number every time that PIN number was used. Sorry, that jumped ahead just a little bit, but that's what that enable is. And then you can limit your PIN numbers to so many digits. Very seldomly used. Caller ID, similar to previous. If you put in a phone number here, if that person were to call the cell number of the unit, it would unlock the relay that you specify here. So this would output 1. So if I change this to 2, everyone in the caller ID would output 2 would be released based on that. So really, it's just a caller ID feature. Outputs. This is where you're going to control your relays. You have output 1, output 2. You can either have a time pulse, latching, or you can disable a relay. Generally, like I was mentioning, where you're doing your PIN codes, output 1 is a time pulse. You can say how many you want in seconds. Standard comes 5. And then your output is normally open or closed. There is separate connections for both on the board. And then output 2, you can go to latching. This is most common. And then you can just specify which one you want. So I'd say this is the most common. Relay 1 is time pulsed for a certain amount of seconds, and then the latching. But again, you can do it either way. These are additional outputs, very seldomly used, but just to pick 2, there is a input 1 and 2. It's a shared line, usually used for like an alarm. So if you want to do a trigger on a door, say if someone were to open a pool door, it would activate an alarm. You could also do it to trigger a particular relay if you wanted to, and you can give me a call. We can go through a lot of these. Generally, these are not used. Digital interface, this is where you're going to look at your modes. This is where you're going to changing your inputs and outputs. The easiest thing to think of is to put a 2 there. That's the most common Wiegand to use. And then you can just enable or disable a facility code. We use 077 and then the SN number as our stock. If you don't like to use facility codes, you can disable them. And then on your PIN and on your remotes, all you have to do is have that 5-digit number. And then you can specify, remember this is out, so you can use this as a pass-through on your Wiegand. Again, hardly ever used, but it gives you 2 formats. And then you can change your format out. Inputs. This is how it comes normally, where I was kind of mentioning input 1 and 2 are more of alarm or input pins. If you do Wiegand 2, the first thing you're going to do is change this to Wiegand. And then those are shared ports. The input, 1 and 2, are turned into Wiegand inputs. That is the most common when you can't get your Wiegand to work. If you do an external device, that's the most common mistake right there, is turning that Wiegand on. Temporary pins. This is good for contractors, guests that you want to work for a certain amount of time. So you'd put in the PIN number here. You type in the name. You could be notified in the administrator if you'd like them to be notified when they are there. You can do a time limit. You can do it by day, or you can do it by time. So if I were to pick time, I could say and remember this is in military time, so 800 hours to, let's do 1700 hours. And I want it to be valid on weekends. So you can specify times. You know, if you didn't want a time, you could do it based on one day, and then you could specify the amount of times. It's really, you can do a counter limit. So again, like I mentioned, you can say, I want them to be here. I only want the pin to be valid 4 times. So you can do it based on a time, or you can do it on a counter. The service button is an external port on it, very seldomly used. You'd have to run an external switch. It's going to be similar to an RE, which is a request to exit. So when that button is pressed, what it's going to do is call the first number, call the second number. If they don't answer, then I'll call the third, call the fourth, call the fifth. This is the same screen that you're going to see on the intercom on a 1 through 1, 2, 4, and R. So because the one button only has a button, you hit the button, it's going to dial phone number 1, phone number 2, phone number 3. And it'll just keep going until it runs out of phone numbers. 25 seconds in between the call before the next call. You can do an extension number. We're working on getting more than just 0 or 1 through 9 as far as extensions, because realistically in a business you're not going to have just 9 extensions. Time, you can do it from start and end. So at night you could disable a switch and only have it valid during business hours. Administration tab, which we kind of talked about, what you're going to want to do is put the primary person here. You can have up to 5, the username, and what you want to be notified of. Just keep in mind that if you're notified every time that happens, or if you're notified of all events, you will be getting a lot of messages. And it does get quite annoying, personally, if you have too many. So be cautious of this and what you have selected. Use it more for if you have a problem, a PIN number being used that shouldn't be. If you want to be notified of unauthorized calls, if you're getting a lot of them, so you know what's kind of time frame. Just be cautious. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you want to know every time someone comes and uses input 1 relay, say it's a storage facility and you want to know every time a truck driver comes in, you could be notified every time a truck driver comes in through input 1. So that's a good way to track if a truck or a supply truck has come, as an example. Miscellaneous. These are just sets if you want to use prepaid SIM cards, preferably not. Try to get more of a set SIM card that's defined. Timer schedules, you can do it by the day. You can do it by a week. So you could automatically have say a business door open from 8 to 5. You can do a gate where it automatically opens a gate from a time. So you can just, like we did before, it's going to be in military time. And then what it'll do, it'll say the gate will be open for 7 hours. And then you can say I want to output 1. Slave mode is going to be the same defined outputs that you listed here in your outputs. So relay 1 is going to be time pulse, 2 is going to be time, and if you change this to latch, that will be that. So whatever's defined there is what's going to be used here as far as the slave. The master mode is only going to be latching, and it's only going to be what relay you do. So if you want it to be latching for 7 hours on relay 1, and it's defined as a time, this will override that. So if you want to use 1 relay, this is a great way to do that. And you can do it based on your days. And there is a holiday tab if you have the newer firmware. Make sure you get that. If you don't, that you can specify the date. Let's say let's pick Christmas. So on the 25th, you could specify in there, and you want to go from, you want employees to be there from 8 o'clock, oops, from 8 o'clock to 12. Then on that particular day, it'll be valid for that. So that's kind of a fun little one there. Hopefully no one has questions. You do have 2 timers, so you can do 2 different ones. Event log, this is where you're going to see all access. First thing that I would suggest doing is just enabling system logging, and your other 2 should be done. And then what you're going to want to do is hit read. And what the read is going to do is it's going to go to the unit, read all the events, and pull them up to the web. And that's something we haven't talked about. As the web is not connected directly to the unit, so you always have to pull stuff from the unit to the web or send stuff to the unit and through there. You notice that little screen that I mentioned earlier that keeps popping up? All your change logs are here. It's keeping what has changed, and then what you want to do is when you're done with your changes, you want to send it to the device. Always remember that, because if you change it in the web and you don't change it in the device, it won't be there. So once you're done, you can select Send to Device, and everything you changed here will be sent to the device. And then that's the same with this. This is the other direction. The read log will pull from the device and read the log, and then it'll display it here. It'll say event type, the time that the event log happened. So this will say pin code, the time, the user. If it has a name, it'll say Dan. If you triggered output 1 or not, and then if there's any additional information on there. So you'll know what pin, what user, what time, and the extra information will say front keypad, external Wiegand device, whatever device that you have enabled on it. And that's always good to do, and you can enable that to automatically retrieve, every 24 hours if you want, or if you're one of those that want to do it manually, you just hit here. Sorry, there's nothing on the device now. I could kind of just show you. What it'll do is it'll go out, read the event log, and then once it connects, it'll go out there, it'll do the commands complete, the data size. It got on, so. And if you don't do it for months, your data is going to be a lot bigger. And then it'll come back, and then it'll say nothing found. At least this particular one, because I don't have anything in there yet. Oh, there is something. Output, like I mentioned, the date and time. This was the user. Remember I did the A to show you that trick. The relay type, and any extra information. And if you're in the testing mode and you want to trigger a relay, you don't want to put it in pin codes and whatnot, feel free and just manually trigger them. If you're remote and you're not at the gate, be cautious, because you are turning on a relay and it will activate your device. So this could be a safety hazard. Always have someone on site or be there when you trigger these, because there is nothing stopping it from triggering. And there's no way to stop it once you start it. That's pretty much all the tabs, and that's just hopefully, I probably overwhelmed some of you, but I think I went through all the tabs. Is there any questions before Quinn comes on? Okay, so Quinn's going to go ahead and get started. Feel free and call me if you have any questions. We can go in more detail on the pin code, because there is a lot of separation in here, and it's a little trickier than just trying to quickly explain it for you. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. We appreciate Dan. Dan will be involved a lot more in these webinars, going through the technical side of things. But as you can see, the EIS cloud software is extremely simple to use. Again, we have apps on both the Android and iPhone, which are very similar to these. But it's extremely easy to program for both you and your customer. And we offer the Wiegand integration so they can track and manage Wiegand transmitters, cards, fobs, any of that. And then just simply manage and access everything. So again, please let us know if you have any questions. This has been recorded and will be up on our YouTube channel later today. But please call in with any questions. Again, the pricing is fantastic. And one last thing I'll do is we are the only cellular-based telephone entry system that we know of that does not charge monthly for our cloud service. That's a big deal. We do not charge you monthly for our cloud service. You use it for free, the app and this. So please keep that in mind. Thanks for your time and have a good weekend.